We'll now deal with R2372, and I'll ask the clerk to perform the reading on that.
Approving the appointment of Michael Besson to the Police Officers Retirement Fund Board of Trustees.
Mr. Ertz, you had a question on that?
Yes. According to the green sheet that I got here, that says the committee is consisted of 3 citizen members appointed by the mayor with approval of the Board of Aldermen. The chief of the police and the mayor also serve on the Board of Trustees. That makes 5, and this is a police officer. How does this fit in to, or who is all on this board? How many? I did not see where police officer was listed as one of the persons that would serve unless this is serving as a citizen.
As a citizen.
This is serving as a citizen.
The other members are John Ness,
okay,
and Steve Kanabi.
Oh, okay.
It's been historical that we typically would have a representative from the police department, person representing the police officers themselves on that pension board. History has brought that to light on this, so we have then positioned Mr. Besson as the.
He looks like a great candidate for it. I have no problem. I was just.
He's a great guy.
Trying to read.
He's been with the service.
I was just trying to match this up with the.
Yeah, no, and it's a good question, and I will tell you that because the police officers, in my opinion, should be represented, have a position on this board representing their own fund. I went to the chief and asked for a nomination from him. He searched long and hard and convinced amongst them, probably him and maybe one other guy. I'm just kidding. But I know that there was a lot of thought given to it, and I know that he talked a lot to Mr. Besson about it, and this has been the nomination brought forward, and I bring it to you at this time.
Well, I'd make a motion to approve it.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Ertz has the motion to approve, seconded by Mr. Kramer on R2372. Further discussion? Mr. Van Buskirk.
I do have a question. I didn't quite understand our city clerk. She indicated who the other members were of the board.
Other citizen members are John Ness and Steve Kanabi.
Okay. So this would be the third citizen
Yes,
member.
Sir.
Well, actually, initially we did not have information in regards to the nominee for this, but we do have that information now. So I do know a little bit more than I did when I first got my packet. But I noticed that the application for this was not filled out until the 28th of February, and I was a little curious as to how that happened that way.
I might be able to help explain. Mike Hawkins represented he was a citizen, and of course he went and left his Secret Service, so that vacated the spot, and Mike Besson, we've been talking back and forth, and he said he'd be glad to serve on the board. He also represents the POA. And it was my oversight in filling out. Mike didn't know that he needed to. And Mike's here tonight. I don't know if everybody met him, but Mike is sitting here. He's 15-year employee of the city, his corporal, and you have the rest of the information, his oversight on my part.
Chief is very gracious to accept full responsibility, but I'll take 50% of that because I normally, as the board knows, we do like to have the applications filled out. Because I went to the chief and asked for a nomination from he and the police department, and I knew Mike, I'm 50% guilty, Chief, of not at 40%. You got 60 for not having the application. So I do offer my apologies for not providing an application.
I'll accept that explanation. Thank you.
Okay, we've had a lot of apologies already here tonight. We've got a motion and a second. Further discussion. Call the vote, please.
Alderman Ertz.
Yes.
Alderman Kramer.
Yes.
Alderman Mock.
Yes.
Alderman Pardue.
Yes.
Alderman Lightfoot.
Yes.
Alderman Melson.
Yes.
Alderman Hamilton.
Yes.
Alderman Van Buskirk.
Yes.
Alderman Azier.
Yes.
Alderman White.
Yes.
Moving to the regular agenda, I'll ask the clerk to perform the reading on item number 2, please.
A resolution authorizing and approving a contract with Thor Lawn and Landscaping LLC for mowing and nuisance abatement services in excess of $15,000, but within budgeted amounts for fiscal year 2010-2011.
Ms. Lind, anything to add on this topic?
Just to provide a little bit of background for this item, in June 2010, the City of Raytown Board of Aldermen approved a City of Independence cooperative agreement with S&S Lawn Care to provide the nuisance abatement services due to the termination of the contract with our current contractor at the time. At the time, we identified that cooperative agreement with S&S as a short-term solution to make sure that we had continual coverage, and then would bid the nuisance abatement services back out at a later date. In January of this year, we did issue the request for bids, structured very similar to that cooperative agreement, where we are asking for an hourly rate per piece of equipment with an operator. We think that based on current best practices by our surrounding cities, we think this will be a much more accurate way to track the actual work that's completed. The nuisance abatement services contract includes all the items that we do, including mowing, removal of junk, trash, and debris, removal of stagnant water, boarding of houses, those kinds of things where we would post a property with a violation, and then once gaining access would actually abate the nuisance. The fiscal year budget for 2010-2011 includes $30,000 for these types of services. Based on the current expenses and the bid from Thor Lawn and Landscaping, we think that that budget amount will be sufficient, assuming normal weather conditions. We're hoping for a spring that's not quite as wet. We did quite a bit of reference checking on Thor Lawn and Landscaping to make sure that they would be up and ready for the job, and got very good, solid recommendations from the people that we contacted. Excited to have them on board. Be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, Ms. Lind? Ms. Melson?
I do have a question on the insurance. With the amounts that are listed there, is that normal amounts? I mean, is that enough
Yes.
for that type of arrangement?
And
And then it also says in there that they will provide evidence to the city about the sub-consultants, that they also have the different types of insurance. When is the time frame that you all usually get that?
their insurance has to be submitted before they'll be issued a business license. They rarely use sub-consultants, so if we would reach a point in the future, typically the nuisance abatement contractor has always done that themselves. It's standard language from the contract, not necessarily applicable in this situation.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lightfoot.
I've got a few questions regarding some of the pricing structures.
Okay.
Some of them seem kind of questionable. For instance, on the removal of junk, trash, and debris, they're bidding that at $12.50 per man hour, which is way too low. And on tire disposal, they're bidding them at $30 a tire, which is extremely high for that service. But really the one that kind of bothers me the most is on their dump truck with operator. $15 for a dump truck with an operator per hour. I'm just wondering, is this company known for doing preservation services, or are they totally been a lawn care company up until this point?
I would say that they have, to my knowledge, they have not done a city contract before. I discussed this actual item with the owner of the company to make sure he was very familiar with the types of services that would be expected of him and what the per hour meant for his contract. He assured me that his bid amounts would stand. We will hold him to that. Sometimes a contractor is looking for an opportunity to expand their services. Maybe they're willing to do that for the opportunity to expand into a new service.
I'm just afraid that with some of their pricing structure, because they're totally accurate when it comes to mowing and that, but when it comes to the preservation, because I know a lot about that business, and even boarding and securing windows at $40, that's including materials. I mean, a 5x8 piece of plywood, which would take to do one front door, you know, just seems like their prices are a little off. I just didn't know if we had looked into it and considered that for $12.50 per man hour, you know, what we may be getting. Will that be a licensed worker with, workman's comp insurance on them, and
Well, that's why the insurance requirements are there in the contract to make sure that the contractor is reputable. They have to submit all of that information.
well, I realize that for their general liability, but
Well, workman's comp is in there as well.
okay.
Yeah, so I think that's why it's so important to make sure that legal counsel reviewed the contract, that the owner is willing to sign it, that they have to give the insurance requirements before they can get their business license. I was very clear about my expectations of quality of work. If we start to see that slide, we'll give them an opportunity to fix it, or they will no longer be a contractor with the city.
Okay.
Mr. Mock.
Yeah, where are they located out of?
Stillwell?
Still can't, okay. Yeah, I do also have concern on this bid also with the tires itself and like Mike said, the dump truck operator and this and that. Well, I can tell you tires are anywhere from $3 to $5 to dispose of. But to me, I think we ought to look at this bid again, to tell you the truth. On just a few things, or get a hold of him and tell him our concerns here. That's it. Thanks.
Mr. Van Buskirk.
I was curious, the companies that bid on other services down at the bottom of the page, the only one that bid a per hour on other services was S&S Lawn, and we didn't get a bid from Thor or any of the others. Are those services we're going to need? Is that...
S&S Lawn Care decided to delineate based on size of mower. In my opinion, the descriptions above that are sufficient for what we would be doing. One of the challenges we have with our current contractor, S&S Lawn Care, is they add additional services based on how they would like to cut the lawn, and that's what makes them very expensive.
Okay.
They add a supervisor on every job, they add a foreman, they add labor, and that's why they've delineated those amounts below. They do excellent work, but is very expensive.
Thank you.
Second. Ms. White has a motion to approve, seconded by Mr. Hamilton. Discussion before we vote.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Azier.
I think it's a fair question to ask. What I find unusual here are some of the huge discrepancies between different charges for different things. Just for example, chainsaw operation, $40 an hour compared to $15. Tires, $30 to $4.50. And what I'm wondering is that when you actually look at who you're going to award the bid to, do you have any kind of, based upon last year, what we spent on all these different items? For example, I don't know how often we use a chainsaw, and I don't know how many tires we have to dispose of. But I would think that you would have to approach this pretty methodically to figure out which one really is the best deal. For example, Thor is $30 an hour for the chainsaw, and or $15 compared to $40. It's a good deal, but then you look at his tires. So if we don't use the chainsaw but once in the spring, and we have 40 tires, we're really losing on it. So that's the question.
Part of the difficulty is that we have not structured our request for bid in this manner. When I first started at the city, we asked for an hourly rate to mow. That's it. In doing so, our contractor was bidding us an hourly rate per person, which was in violation of the contract. That's why we terminated that contract last year. When we got S&S Lawn Care as our interim person through the cooperative agreement with the City of Independence, that's where you begin to see their list, similar to what they've submitted today, on the individual services. We don't have a lot of history to show how much we use. What my opinion, based on what I see and what the kind of services we do, probably 60% or maybe even 70% is strict mowing. Mostly what we post for is to mow. We do not use a chainsaw a lot of times. We do removal of junk, trash, and debris, but oftentimes it's literally trash and debris. It's not something where you're disposing of tires or those kinds of things. Next year, when we have gone through a whole year to be able to look at it, but I anticipated questions about the pricing. You see this in public work contracts as well. You will see some discrepancy between a concrete supervisor or a concrete company that maybe has better concrete prices and an asphalt company that has better asphalt prices. So we don't know exactly why they did it. Maybe they have another job here in Raytown and are able to have an economy of scale because they're here. We drafted our contract to make sure we get the high quality of services that we want. And we expect, based on their insurance requirements and their business license and the expectations in the contract, that they will honor that for the price listed.
I can see where it's going to make your task more difficult, and indeed, if we really don't use very many of these services, once or twice isn't that big of a deal. And it's really kind of up to you, but I just would recommend that at least you try to track it in some way, so at least next year when you do your budget, you have something better to compare it with. I realize that's not the opportunity now, but thank you.
That's why when they submit their invoice, they'll actually break it out by piece of equipment, so we will have that ability.
Thank you.
Mr. Kramer.
Well, I personally, and I've reviewed these things every year for 4 years now, and I noticed it to be more itemized, and I really appreciate that. It gives us the ability to see, and like you said, some of the price structures from one company to the other vary drastically, but it sounds like you've made a good choice and done your research. I like the way that you itemized it out, and we can see where we're spending money and everything. So that's all I got.
Further discussion? Got a motion and a second already. No further discussion. I'll ask the clerk to call the vote.
Alderman White? Yes. Alderman Hamilton?
Yes.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Pardue?
Yes.
Alderman Azier?
Yes.
Alderman Melson?
Yes.
Alderman Ertz?
Yes.
Alderman Van Buskirk?
Yes.
Alderman Mock?
Yes.
Alderman Lightfoot?
No.
Item number 3, please.
A resolution authorizing and approving an agreement with Municipal Code Corporation for recodification of the City of Raytown Code of Ordinances and amending the fiscal year 2010-2011 budget for a total amount not to exceed $30,000.
Mr. Sharma, would you like to talk about this, or Mr. Willerth? Ms. Henry, our clerk? Very good. Excellent.
The City of Raytown Code of Ordinances have not been codified since the original date of adoption, which was October 7th of 1969, which would be 42 years ago. We put this out for bid. Municipal Code Corporation was selected through the competitive and publicly announced process. The scope of work that they will conduct will include a legal research. They will review all past legislation against state law and review for inconsistencies and conflict with our current legislation itself. In addition to the recodification, we will also be adding the zoning code to the Code of Ordinances and removing the personnel code so that it can be a standalone document.
Mr. Mock, any questions?
Second.
Mr. Mock has a motion to approve, seconded by Ms. White. Discussion before we vote on item number 3.
I have a question.
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Ms. Nelson?
On this, it states that they're currently working in Belton. Is that what they're doing right now? And when would they be coming to Raytown to start the process?
From the date that the contract is signed and assigned to them, it'll be 120 days for it to be completed.
So somebody would be able to...
Correct.
Okay. And it also says that they will create a legal manuscript for the city's review. Is that something that the Board of Aldermen would get, or is that just, would that be something that you would be doing for review, or how does that work?
I'm familiar with that kind of document from the recodification at Raymore, and that's a document that we can forward to you for your review. It is mainly of use for the city clerk and the city attorney to look at it and report to you as to if they find any significant changes or discrepancies. Okay. But certainly we can make it available to you for your reading and edification also.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Azure.
I'm sorry, I didn't pick up the date of the last time we codified these. Could you give that to me again, please?
October 7th, 1969.
Thank you.
Mr. Mock was just a pup then. Further discussion? We have a motion and a second already. Call the vote, please.
Alderman Mock?
Yes.
Alderman White?
Yes.
Alderman Lightfoot?
Yes.
Alderman Van Buskirk?
Yes.
Alderman Ertz?
Yes.
Alderman Melson?
Yes.
Alderman Hamilton?
Yes.
Alderman Azier?
Yes.
Alderman Pardue?
Yes.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Item number 4, please.
An ordinance authorizing the City of Raytown to enter into an intergovernmental cooperative agreement for the investment of public funds through the Missouri Securities Investment Program.
Mr. Wilmoth, anything to add, sir?
No, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions of our Finance Director, Mr. Van Buskirk.
I'll make a motion that the ordinance be approved as read.
Mr. Van Buskirk has the motion to approve as read, seconded by Mr. Lightfoot. Discussion before we vote on item number 4. Call the vote, please.
Alderman Van Buskirk?
Yes.
Alderman Lightfoot?
Yes.
Alderman Pardue?
Yes.
Alderman Hamilton?
Yes.
Alderman Melson?
Yes.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Azier?
Yes.
Alderman White?
Yes.
Alderman Ertz?
Yes.
Alderman Mock?
Yes.
Item number 5, please.
An ordinance authorizing and approving the city to enter into a cooperative agreement by and between the City of Raytown, Missouri and the Raytown Crossing Improvement District.
2 of the gentlemen that have worked hard to put this together, Mr. Jeremy Wilmoth, our Finance Director, and Tom Cole, our Economic Development Administrator. Anything to add, gentlemen?
Sure. Mayor, Board of Aldermen, thank you for the time this evening. At the February 15th Board of Aldermen meeting, this body approved the formation of the CID and granted the authority of the city to enter into a cooperative agreement. The cooperative agreement provides basic definitions and parameters of the district regarding such items as the manner it's formed, when it must submit its budget to the city, and the manner in which records will be kept throughout the duration of the CID. Each of the items in the agreement before you conform to the requirements of state law. A draft of the cooperative agreement was provided on February 15th, and tonight we're asking for the first reading of the ordinance authorizing the city to enter into a cooperative agreement with the Raytown Crossing CID, which again is the Sutherlands project. The draft you saw on February 15th has been updated. As you'll recall, Ms. Melson pointed out that it actually referred to a city council rather than Board of Aldermen. Those corrections have been made. Additionally, the board has asked about a construction schedule, or at the last meeting you asked about a construction schedule. We will receive that schedule here in the next couple of weeks, and it will be before you prior to the second reading of this ordinance. Additionally, the Sutherlands team is not here this evening. They are literally working around the clock, putting together their site plan and all the information that the planning department needs to get this thing approved in relatively short order at a staff level. So they're literally working on that. We should have that in the next probably 36 or 48 hours at maximum. So that team is working diligently, but this document is before us this evening. Staff would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions of staff, Ms. Melson.
And that was one of my first things on thanking you on putting some of those corrections in there. I do have a question on page 4 about their annual budget that is supposed to be presented to the Board of Aldermen within 180 days, no later than 90 days prior to the first day of the fiscal year. Fiscal year being January or our fiscal year?
The fiscal year is enumerated in the CID petition. I don't recall offhand what their fiscal year was. Let me see if we can find it. I think it's attached back here. Just one second.
Well, I'll just ask the second part of that. And so when that is presented, and it says to the Board of Aldermen, so is that to all the Board of Aldermen, or is that just to the Board of Aldermen, like on the Finance Committee?
Now, the way we do this is they'll present their budget, and I think Teresa will give it to you all with a memo saying if you have any issues or concerns to let her know. It's really a formality unless we find something in their budget that violates state law. The courts have been pretty clear that they're allowed to spend it within the wide parameters of the state law.
Okay. Okay. Well, if you find that in there about, what the fiscal year is for them.
Yeah, I'll let you know since
Okay. Thank you.
Further questions? This is the first reading, so we don't need a motion, but...
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Willers.
I would note, and perhaps we need to amend for the record, that the title of the bill inadvertently omitted the word community, which was in the Raytown Crossing. We need to insert Raytown Crossing Community Improvement District, consistent with the petition, and I apologize for not catching that sooner, so at least need to make note to you that the title, and I believe our clerk read it with that word inserted, so you heard a correct reading of the title, and but I do want it for the record, and so that we have it correct for your consideration next time that word be inserted.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Further questions? Discussion? Again, this is the first reading. If there's no further discussion, I'm going to move on. No, I don't think so. I think we're just good if we're going to move on with that. Thank you for that. Next item is the closed session. Notice is hereby given that the mayor and board of aldermen may conduct a closed session pursuant to the following statutory provisions. Paragraph 610.021, subparagraph 1, legal actions, causes of action or litigation involving a public governmental body, and any confidential or privileged communications between the public governmental body or its representatives and its attorneys. Do I hear a motion to go to closed session? So moved. Second. Mr. Kramer has a motion, seconded by Mr. Hamilton, to go to closed session. I ask the clerk to call the roll vote, please.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Hamilton?
Yes.
Alderman Van Buskirk?
Yes.
Alderman Perdue?
Yes.
Alderman Lightfoot?
Yes.
Alderman Mock?
Yes.
Alderman Melson?
Yes.
Alderman Azier?
Yes.
Alderman Ertz?
Yes.
Alderman White?
Yes.
Let's reconvene in the administrative conference room in 7 minutes. Thanks. 7 minutes. 7. Not 8, 7.